This is Meet the Author. I am Tigner James. Black and Hispanic children who attend public schools with high violence and suspicion rates, they tend to make great candidates for the school to prison pipeline. Young people from low income and disadvantaged backgrounds become incarcerated at a higher rate than their counterparts. Michael Phillips was told that he would not amount to nothing. Despite his efforts of his parents, it appeared that he was destined for prison. Looking at a possible 30-year prison sentence, fate would have it that his wrong lane of life choices ended with a judge offered him a right turn to change his life. Today, joining me is Michael Phillips. He is the author of a new book that is entitled Wrong Lanes Have Right Turns, A Pardoned Man's Escape from the School to Prison Pipeline and What We Can Do to Dismantle It. He is a pastor, founder of LifePrep, Chief Engagement and Fulfillment Officer for the Tigner James Foundation. But today we're talking about his true to life story of how we can dismantle prison pipeline through education. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the table, Michael Phillips. How are you doing today, brother?
Man, I'm doing fabulous. Thank you so much for having me on. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today.
It really is. Before we get started, ladies and gentlemen, this is the book. It's currently available on blackbookstore.com. I highly recommend you to take a look at it. If you have not picked up a copy, now is a good time to get a copy. It's a practical book. It talks about things that most of us know about, but it drills down a little deeper to talk about prison, school to prison, education and lack thereof that affects people of color, more specifically, Black and brown children in America. Before we get into the book, who is Michael Phillips?
Oh, wow. I love that question. You know, the complexity of me. Man, I am, of course, a father, a husband. I'm an education advocate. I am a social entrepreneur. I'm a pastor. All of those things are emblematic of stuff that I do, but they also encapsulate who I am. I think at my core, I am a passionate individual that wants to help people live better.
Yeah, that last part is very evident. Through your book, it shows passion. It shows that you really are concerned about our people, not just young people, but just people in general, and also about education. Yeah. And now, before you got to where you are now, what the backstory? What were some of the things that kind of didn't get you to where you were, to where we are today?
Yeah, there's so many barriers that we face in life, man, that tried to stop us from getting to where we are. And some of those barriers for me were in the world of education. Unfortunately, starting at a very early age, you know, I was being told as early as kindergarten and first grade that I wouldn't amount to anything, that I would end up in jail. And you can only imagine what that does on the psyche of a child to hear those type of words coming from an adult that is entrusted with their development. And unfortunately, my educational experience, my environment was all teaching and training me that, you know, I was not going to have a positive contribution to society, that I wasn't really worth anything, and that I didn't have anything to give. Conversely, I also had positive voices as well that juxtaposed those negative voices, which made it very confusing to me as a child.
Yes, and rightly so. And I was going to ask you that because you did have that positive reinforcement from a mother, father, and this family, and your father being a pastor, and you also had the church on your side. So I can't imagine what it's like when you don't have those elements in your life. But for you, what was the disconnect? Why it was so hard to see that, okay, because mom and dad and the community saying I am great, it was hard to receive that versus this teacher who was telling you was no good and you were going to amount to nothing?
Yeah, it was for me, when my father died, I lost my anchor in that community of love and support, because all of that love and support really came from the love and support of my father. We were very close. And when he died, when I was 12 years old, I kind of lost the ability to hear those voices of affirmation and love, and to receive that sort of love. And then simultaneously, it disconnected me from my faith, because at that time, there was an immature approach to religion as it relates to dealing with pain.
Yes.
And so the church didn't offer a practical insight or answer as to why my father left this earth. If it would have, perhaps I would have stayed connected to it. But what it did was it made me very angry with God, with church, that I didn't want to have anything to do with it. So now I'm left open and vulnerable to what society's perception of who I am and what I can do and what I can be, rather than being open to this beloved community that I came from, because now that community was really a trigger, because it only reminded me of that my dad's not here. So
Right.
it was a very hard road. It was a very hard road. And then let me add that then also losing him also caused me to lose my model, because it's very hard to become what you don't see.
Oh, wow. That's true.
But it's very easy to become what you're always exposed to. And the kings and heroes in my neighborhood, mostly they were drug dealers and they were guys on the corner, but they were kings. Regardless of their choices, regardless of what they did, we held them in high respect and esteem. And back then, a lot of them would look out for younger guys like me, and that happened to be the case. So I had the guys on the corner become my mentors and my pastors, and I kind of took to them. I took to them because they looked out for me.
Right. You mentioned in the book, it was very profound when I had to highlight it and mark it. Going back to what you said about your father, losing your father, there are no words that can fill the void that a person experiences when they lose a mother, especially a mother and a father.
Yeah.
That's a major void. There's no words that a person can ever say to help fill that gap. But
Yeah.
and you best said it. You said grief is not a single emotion, nor is it a single event. Grief is a cycle.
Yeah, it is. I'm still grieving.
100%. 100%.
I'm still grieving, man.
It could be a smell. It could be a truck pass by. It could be a song. It could be a sermon. It could be the wind blowing against your skin.
Yeah.
It'll bring your eyes will start leaking just because you remember that. That's a fact.
Exactly. It's a fact. And my dad's birthday was Christmas. So every Christmas.
So you got a permanent mark. You got a permanent mark on the calendar. No matter, even if you forget the day that he passed, you can't forget the day he was born.
That's right. And every Christmas it's a reminder that he's not here. And my father never heard me preach a sermon. He never saw me dunk a basketball. He never saw me accomplish some of the things I accomplished in life. And so it's kind of the grief is not as heavy, but it's still there as a reminder that I would give anything just to see him one more time. Yeah.
You in the book you said you told your father that you wanted to be like him. You wanted to be a pastor.
Yeah, I did.
Now, being a pastor, that ain't something that somebody just raise his hand and volunteer to be. But it comes with some serious things or requirements that go along with being a pastor. So when did you hear that voice of God say, Michael Phillips, I need for you to be a messenger for God?
I was a little boy. My father had just acquired a piece of property that he wanted to move his church into, and he had a vision for K through 12 education. And he wanted to have a school, and he wanted to have a church in the same place that would be anchor support for community. And I was with him when he found the location, and to see him mesmerized by vision was incredible. And so I decided that once we got into the building, I was helping, doing whatever I could do as a little kid. I was helping him, in the building, and he was standing on the stage. They were putting in carpet or something like that, and I was back of the stage, and I just knew at that moment, I'm called to help people. I think I'm going to be a preacher. And I ran and I grabbed him and I shook his coattail and I said, Daddy, I'm going to be a preacher. And he gave me a mop and a bucket and said, go clean the bathroom. And man, when I tell you I cleaned that bathroom, spick and span, top to bottom, it was glistening. And hours later, he came back and expected it and said, I was going to be a great preacher one day. And I asked him why. He said, because you cleaned the bathroom. You understand it? It was he was basically saying that if you're willing to serve, you could pastor.
Yeah, that's true. And I want to add to that also. Coming to be a pastor, it's would you say that is pastoring much bigger than preaching?
Pastoring and preaching are two different things. Pastoring is the care and stewardship of individuals' spiritual lives as well as their practical well-being. And you have to provide supports at every level, at every strata of society for your congregation and for your people. And that's daily. Preaching is when you get up there on the Sunday or Wednesday or wherever you are to share the gospel. And it's a very small portion of what you do as a pastor. And so for people who get into this profession, they have to understand that the weight and care of a community is really at the root of what you do. And if you cannot provide supports at that level, don't do it.
Well said. I like how you described that. That was so apropos, because so many people don't really understand the true meaning of what a pastor, a minister, preacher, reverend, however you want to paint that picture with the title. It's more than Sunday morning.
It's cleaning the bathroom. You're in the mess of life. And right. You have to be willing to do that and mop it up and clean it up and do it to the point where to know that it's going to get messy again and go do it all over again. And to love people right where they are, man. And to understand that we all have bathroom moments.
Literally and figuratively, yes.
and be grateful that somebody's willing to clean the bathroom.
Clean up my mess.
That's right.
That's so real. That's really real. And I think that people miss that, especially, when people you see that homeless person on the street. And in your mind, you say that, he just wants $1. But sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes when they went to Beautiful, what happened? Silver and gold I have not.
Yeah.
But I can pray for you.
Yeah, such as I have. Right. It's about empathy, man. And empathy has so much power because it doesn't need any details. I don't need to know what you went through. I'm human. So to see you where you are tells me a whole lot. Okay. So I don't need the details. All I need is a mirror. If I can see myself through what you're dealing with, of having a human experience and you're in it,
yes,
I understand it without judgment. Okay, so empathy doesn't need details; it just needs the mirror. That's how powerful it is. And if we would just take a moment to reflect on where we are and where we could be, we would have way less judgment for individuals who are struggling or going through. And we would really want to figure out how to solve some of these systemic issues that are in our society, whether you're homeless, whether you're incarcerated, whether you're, a house mom living in suburbia, but you're on pain pills and nobody know it. It's all the same thing.
It's a different chapter of a person's life.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why are you so committed to changing the educational system? Why is that so important to you?
Education is by nature is designed to be the great equalizer. It's a tool of liberation. To educate means to lead out. That is the very meaning of the word education. The problem is that we're handing kids knowledge and taking their education.
Wow.
In other words, when you educate a young person, you're pulling out of them all of their innate abilities and talents. You're telling them who they are. You're showing them, their gifts and their talents and how to use them and cultivate those skills. We designed a system that wasn't shaped that way based upon the nature of education. We designed something that was one size fits all, that was really built on a caste system that pushes individuals out to do repetitive things. It is not personalized enough. And so if we can get education right, then we can solve a lot of these other issues. It would fix housing, it would fix health, it would fix mass incarceration. But we have to be willing to really be honest about the system of education that we have in the United States of America.
Okay. I received that. And you talk a little bit about that in your book. So what are a couple of things that you say that we can do beginning right now to plant the seed to begin that in our communities? And what is Michael Phillips doing right now to start planting seeds to harvest a new future?
First thing, we have to become critically aware and critically conscious of how we contribute to the system as is. Every individual, if you have kids, if you're going to have kids, be aware of the system that we have and what it does and what it doesn't do, right? If you have a school that's working for your child, that's phenomenal. I'm happy for you. But please know and be aware that there's a school or district that is not getting it done for other children, okay? Right. And for it to get it done for other children does not mean it's going to take something from your child. That's number one, right? Because this is not about a zero-sum game. We want every child to have access to a high-quality education. Education needs to become plural in this format, meaning we need all tools. We need everything at our disposal, whether that's a traditional school, traditional public school, whether that's a charter school, whether that's a home school, whether that's a micro school, whether that's a private school. You need everything at your disposal, okay, to find something that works for every child. And so we need to incorporate that without cannibalizing the opportunity that is present today through technology and all the various things that we can do to educate our children. Thirdly, once we become aware, we can't just sit idly by and be silent about it. We have to lift our voices. We have to advocate. There are many ways that you can do that. Every parent right now, every person right now can find out what is the disciplinary practices of a local school and make sure that they are practicing restorative practices rather than zero tolerance policies that will push children out of school and put them squarely in front of the criminal justice system because of one or two behavioral things that happen. And then get them, slap a label on them that says they're at risk use. They're not at risk, they're at promise, okay? They might be going through some traumatic events that we have to make sure that we are taking care of their well-being and being aware of what they're dealing with at home. And right now, in particular, all of our kids have been traumatized by COVID and all of the things that brought into play globally. And so we need an army of counselors in our school, not an army of cops. You understand? So there's a lot that we can do but it really starts with becoming aware. And the reason I say that is because people don't know. Not everybody knows what our system looks like.
Right. Can you give an example of any best practices right now of what you just stated that you can say point to and say, hey, here's an example how what you just said is actually working?
Absolutely. I sat on the Maryland School of Prison Pipeline Commission, and one of the things that we did was a deep dive and study into restorative practices versus zero tolerance policy, right? So zero tolerance policy means, hey, you mess up, you cuss out, a kid jumps up and cusses out a teacher, okay? Uh, that child could be suspended. If that school has a zero tolerance policy, then that means that child can be expelled from that school. It gets marked on their record, and then they have a very difficult time getting into any other school, pushing them out of the system itself, right? So we need to practice restorative approaches, meaning that when that occurs, how can we restore the child back to community collectively together, which will require, okay, the child, the teacher, the classroom, and everybody involved to have a mediator to bring them together, okay, to bring healing to that moment, and restoration begins. So our view on justice in this country has to come from a culture of possibility rather than a culture of punishment, to say that our view of justice is not retribution, not that you should pay a penalty all the time for an incident that had no violence attached to it, okay? But rather, how can we restore you back to the community because you had some trauma in your life that we did not acknowledge. And when trauma goes unacknowledged, tragedy goes uninterrupted, right? So it is a tragedy then that we're losing so many kids to just the simple fact of disciplinary practice, how we choose to discipline a child when there's an interruption or break in the learning process in school, and what we do with that child. Let's stop throwing away our geniuses. Let's stop throwing away the potential of thousands of children because they have some traumatic events and don't know how to process that trauma.
That's right. You spot on. So we don't know what a child is going through. They may have woke up this morning with no power, no food to eat. Mom and daddy was fighting all night. They didn't sleep at all. I got to come to school and Miss Teacher said something to him and he snaps.
Exactly.
Just that simple.
Exactly. And so the goal for that child shouldn't be what's wrong with you. It should be what happened. What happened to you? That's the trauma-informed question we need to be asking.
So through Maryland, you have seen results from this? I mean, have they seen the turn in this
across
practice?
Across the board, less children are dropping out of school. We're seeing, and I don't know what the stats are today, but back then we were seeing more resources given towards school counselors rather than school resource officers. And it's starting to bring about a change in how we approach disciplining our children and giving them the resources that they need, particularly for Black and Brown students who have to deal with a ton of traumatic events that most kids don't have to face. Okay.
Rightly so. Yes.
Yeah. You got food. You're going home. There's a significant amount of children who are homeless. They don't have an actual home. They stay at auntie's house and grandma's house and cousin Ray in them house day to day. Okay?
They're surfing, they couch surfing, or they sleeping in beds with 3 or 4 people, whereas you can go home and you got a queen size, twin size bed with ample cover, and you don't think about anything.
And fresh clothes. Think about this. The number one reason for school absenteeism is uniforms. You don't have clean uniforms. You don't have, your clothes are not clean. And what child wants to go to school dirty and filthy? Nobody wants to do that. And so I'd rather not go. And mama would rather not send me because she doesn't want you to be embarrassed. And she's doing all that she can. And that's the reality. And so when I wrote this book, I wrote it to humanize some of these problems through my story, so that you can see no one's complaining. We understand life is hard. We understand life is difficult, but there are a set of circumstances that are real, that some of them come from systemic barriers that we have the power to remove.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how well has the book been received since it's been published and you've been on the road talking about it? How well has it been received? What have you been hearing from experts, from professionals, as well as just the average person who's been reading the book?
It's been absolutely incredible, from Dr. David Steiner, who's head of Education Policy Institute at Johns Hopkins, to people I'm running into in the airport. It's been so well received. It's resonating at a level that I didn't think. And what has been surprising to me is that the level of, if I can just, I don't want to make it racial, but the level of white men who have really taken to this book because they went through similar things.
Wow.
And that shocked me. That
wow.
Right there.
I was waiting on you to say something totally opposite.
Exactly. A man came up to me in the airport to tell me that this book resonated so well with him because when he was in first grade, he was told that he wouldn't amount to anything, grew up in a very rural area. And so it made me think that we are going through the same things, that our story is one and the same, but the details make it feels like that we're so different. We're not that different. We're going through some of the same things, but we're not talking about it. We're not sharing it. And so therefore, when we bring up these systemic issues, it makes it sound like we're complaining.
Black thing, yeah, we're complaining.
It's a black thing. We're complaining. No, all of us, okay, are being faced with these same systemic barriers. It's just that you ain't saying nothing about it, okay? And we're frankly, we're tired of it, okay? Right? We're tired of it, and I don't want my children's children to have to fight my demons and my devils and my oppression and my barriers, because they shouldn't have to. Shouldn't have to. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, they shouldn't have to.
What's the story behind the title? Wrong lanes have right turns.
So I was facing 30 years. Before I knew I was going to face 30 years in prison, I fled when federal officers raided my mom's house. And so they raided everything. But to raid my mother's house was just,
that was.
Oh man, I'm still hot about that. But when I found everything out that was crashing down, I fled. I had an exit plan and a strategy, and my strategy was to make it to Cuba. I had enough cash, so I was going to drive to Florida, and then I was going to hop it over to Cuba. I had a passport and everything. The problem was that since the federal officers was after me, I couldn't use, everything that I had to get there. So I had to figure out a way how I was going to get a boat to Cuba. Okay, so
you seriously thought that thing all the way?
Listen, if you're gonna get in, you gotta know how to get out. And so I went to my stash, my cash stash. I got the cash, and I got my car, and I'm headed south. My mother calls me on the Nextel two-way that I gave. Okay, this is how far we're going back here.
So was that your burner? Was that your burner phone?
Right. Them Nextel. And so she hits me up, and I'm like, and all she said, I don't know if you can hear me, baby, but I need you to come on back, and whatever you're running from, we can face together. I hit her back and said, Ma, I can't talk now. Just get off the phone. I'll talk to you later. And I got in my car. And when I got in my car, I said, I got to go back. And I don't know why I did it, but I had to do it. So I was at a very busy intersection, 95 South. I could either make a turn and go to Virginia Beach or keep going south towards, North Carolina. And because I'm headed to Florida. But I was in the wrong lane when I decided to make a turn. And there was no way possible for me to make the turn. And so if I would have kept going straight, I'd have never turned around. But from the wrong lane, I made a right turn. Yeah. So wrong
God
lanes
has a
have right turns.
so God has a way to put his hand in your mess when you don't think he
Yeah.
got his hand in your mess.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
You would have had an
Yeah.
opportunity if you was in the left lane to make the left turn. You could have made the left turn.
Yeah. Yeah. But I was in a completely wrong lane on the far right side of the road, and I still was able to make a right turn. Yeah. Wrong lanes have right turn.
I like that. What did you learn about yourself writing this book?
Man, that I still had some trauma that I had to deal with. That I'm very passionate about people, all people. That I was put on this earth to help people live a better life. That the importance of helping the next generation stand on your shoulders is so paramount that if you spend all your life doing it, it will not be a life wasted.
I like that.
Yeah.
What thoughtful, encouraging piece of advice would you give your younger self?
Wow. Yeah, I've had that conversation many times.
And also specify the age, because yours was broken in chapters and ages. So you can, 12, 16, 17, 18, all the way up until the final.
At 12, I would say that go ahead and cry. It's okay. The tears are a gift. It's going to help you to transform your pain. You don't have to store it. And all of those feelings of grief and sorrow about your father, at some point it's going to turn to joy for all of the memories that you have. At 18, I would say, you don't have to be loyal to your mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
That what you did is not who you are. You're more than that. Wow. And you just come into the discovery of who you are. Yeah.
What do you want readers to glean from this book?
I want us to know that human lives are redeemable. I want us to understand that if we do not transform the troubles and the pain that we've had as adults, we will pass them down to the next generation.
Yes.
And our society will not be better for that. And we're in this thing, I hate to sound it this way, but to be honest, we are actually in this thing together. We are in this thing together. Our story was so similar. I said in the book that my story could have been told by many different people at many different times.
Yes.
And so we're really in this thing together.
Yeah. What was your favorite part about writing this project?
That my children got to see me do it.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, that they got to weigh in on it and help me think through some of the process of it. To get their perspective on things was incredible. And to find out actually that I enjoyed writing. I really did, because I didn't think I could do it, but I enjoyed it.
How old are your children, and what were the things that kind of helped spark, keep you engaged and energized that they said?
So my children, my son is 24 and my daughter is 20, going on 50. When I would share, like when I wrote the first chapter and I shared the first chapter with them, and they were so mesmerized by the way I was able to describe, my childhood in first grade and my teaching, that I remembered and recalled all those things. They were astonished, and I said, I'll never forget some of the stuff that I went through. And I wanted them to know my story in and out, back and forth. Some of the greatest things they said to me about that is they said, thank you, Dad, because We don't know what that's like.
Right.
And that, to me, was everything.
Wow. That's
that
awesome.
they don't even know what that's like. Good.
Right.
Good.
But but you can live vicariously through my stories.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
What is LifePrep?
LifePrep is my goal. It's my dream. It's my passion, man. I want to create a system of education or a tool of education that's preparing children for life. But not only children, also their parents, because sometimes you have to have a dual generational approach as it relates to education, because to help the child that's going through that trauma means you also have to help the parent. Okay. And so it is my hope to start to create a network of schools that are, in a sense, you know, in the traditional sense, K through 12, so forth and so on, but also to re-envision juvenile education as well. We're spending, in some cases, on average, almost $100,000 per juvenile detainee. My son went to Harvard. Harvard doesn't cost $100,000 a year, but we're spending $100,000 a year on juvenile justice. What if we reallocated those resources to create schools for those individuals rather than having them to be incarcerated, much like myself, go to school instead of going to prison, and we can provide the wraparound support for them so that when they do come out of that, they're not going back into prison in this jail churn. And we're significantly reducing recidivism, as well as the economic benefit to society, that we're not wasting all of this money on locking people up. And so that's my vision for that. And so I called it LifePrep. And I started a couple of years ago, which is why I stepped down from pastoring full time and joined forces with Bishop T.D. Jakes and T. Jakes Foundation to see that vision come to life.
Okay. So LifePrep right now is a part of T.D. Jakes Foundation. Correct?
It's not a part of it. It's not a part of it. It's just when they get me, they get that.
Gotcha. So, okay, understand. All right. Got it. Okay. So give me one or two impactful initiatives that LifePrep that that you've been able to show to our society.
Absolutely. So one of the things we were able to do was we developed a pilot program that said Families That Code, and we were able to help in that dual generational approach, help provide access to jobs in tech and IT for families who actually needed it and were looking for it. But at the same time, we were able to also educate their children. So dual generationally set children on that track to go into science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, because these are the jobs of the future, but also at the same time help their parents to understand how to do some of those functions to get a job in that area in the present, and to create that dual generational impact and approach. That now you got mama working, in IT and Amazon, and baby girl or the young man is also learning those tools in school, so that they can have a model in the house of what that profession looks like while they're aspiring to do that very same thing. So we did a little pilot program in Baltimore. It was very successful. We helped about 60 families be able to do that. And it was just a start. So I'm just getting started, man. But I'm telling you, I'm after this thing.
So you foresee being able to ignite this and get it started in other parts of the country?
Absolutely, absolutely. And at some point, it's going to look like full-fledged schools with a 21st century approach to education that's personalized for every child. And also it will look like a different approach as it relates to getting juveniles who have been incarcerated and completely serving them to the capacity where once we are finished, they're going to be able to produce their highest contributions to society.
Okay. How would you describe your leadership style?
I would say I'm a transformational leader. My superpower is listening. Um, I will not be an expert on somebody else's pain or somebody else's process. I want to listen and help guide you to the best of your ability to do what you do. Okay. Yeah. And my goal is to help you as a leader and support you in helping you to accomplish what only you are designed to do. I might have the vision, you might have the skill. And so I'll just let your skill develop and grow, and I'll support that. And so in that sense, I'm a transformational leader in that way. And I'm deeply, deeply a believer in really great leadership.
Okay. Now, I know that you've kind of set aside or put it on pause being a pastor leading over church, but nonetheless, you still are a minister of the word.
Absolutely.
So how do you get ministered to?
Yeah, first of all, I joined one of the greatest churches in America under the leadership of one of the greatest leaders of a generation. And so being fed by Bishop Tigner James every Sunday is incredible. Incredible. And it's been refreshing to sit under the word because when you're preaching all the time, sometimes you don't get that. But even when I was a pastor, I would jump on the plane and go wherever I had to go to get fed.
Okay.
Because you have to. You have
exactly.
to.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have to. And so, but to be able to have it every Sunday, and sometimes I preach there, and I preach all the time all over the place. And I'm still a pastor at heart, even though I'm not a senior pastor of the church. But that's how I get fed. And certainly, I need to be fed in different aspects, not just spiritually, but mentally as well. And so, James Baldwin, Maya Andrew, I could go on and on.
Right.
They are the mentors in my head. They are certainly the orators that help me to have brain food, and I'm an avid reader. Yeah.
To our viewers who's watching this, and we're talking about education, we're talking about school to prison, and there's going to be that individual who is riding the fence. They're frustrated because they prayed to God earnestly and they feel that God has ignored their prayers, but at the same time, they're stuck where they are. How important is it for that person to still to develop a stronger relationship with God?
Wow, I think it's very important because I'll say it to you this way. If you get stuck in your history, you could never embrace your destiny. And the only way that you can embrace your destiny is truly to have a walk with God. It is He that made us and not we ourselves. This is why the hallmark of the Christian faith is Jesus on the cross. And He's on the cross between two thieves.
Yes.
Those thieves to me represent the past and the future. So there's a thief for the past and there's a thief for the future. There's a thief of your history and there's also a thief for your destiny. But He died for both. And there was only one of them on the cross that was able to receive Him. And that was the one that was concerned about His future. He said to Jesus, "Remember me when you come to your kingdom." And Jesus said, "I don't have to remember you. Today you can be with me in paradise." Yes. And so the man that was stuck in his past, his history, told Jesus to save himself. And Jesus' goal, passion, mission was to be up there for him.
He missed it.
And he missed it. You don't have to miss it because of your history. You don't have to miss it because you're worried about what you're going to become or what you can be, or because you're stuck in what you've done. Because God loves you just as you are. Amen. And all you have to do is receive Him.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's so that is the truth. What's your biggest inspiration?
My kids. My kids, man. When I look at my son and my daughter, I also look generationally, and I can see my grandkids and my great grandkids, and I'm inspired to leave an indelible impression in the earth for them. and for my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, so that they can hold their heads high in this world. And prayerfully, that will become a model for many, many generations and many different families. That's my greatest inspiration. And it's all that I'm working towards.
Wow. Yeah. My last question for you. Who's your favorite biblical figure?
Oh, man, that's a good one. So my favorite biblical figure, I would have to say, is David.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons.
Yeah.
But he I don't want to take the conversation somewhere else, but he is my favorite biblical figure. I so relate to his life. I so relate to all from him being discounted and not looked at, and coming into becoming king, and setting up this legacy that would transcend the world, that would transcend how we live and what we do, came through his lineage. And I so relate to that. I relate to him using a rock and a rag to kill a giant, because that's all he had and that's all he needed. That tells us, as a footnote, work with what you got. It can get the job done.
Right.
Get the job done, man. And so, yeah, David would be my favorite figure.
Yeah, David by far, and I probably of all the figures in the Bible, he's probably the one that is the most holistic, because he touches so many different people in so many ways. He was a liar.
Yeah.
He was an adulterer.
Yeah.
He was a murderer.
Yeah.
So he covers the gamut. So, but then at the end of the day, what did God say? You the apple of my eye. All because he did one thing all the time. Anytime he mucked up, he did what? He went back and repented.
Yeah, man. Yeah. His heart towards God was his superpower, right? And that's what I mean by don't be loyal to your mistakes. That's what I mean by some of the stuff that I said, that he ran right back to his creator. Regardless of what he did, he ran right back to him.
Yes.
And isn't that the journey? Isn't that, what we're after?
Yeah. We're not perfect. No man or woman is perfect, but if you can remove your pride and ego enough to say, okay, God, I really messed up that time.
Yeah.
And sincerely mean it, God will forgive us. And he said, I'll forget it for as far from the east is to the west.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And throw it in the sea of forgiveness, and have it blotted out, that there's even no record of it. That's amazing to me.
There is no human who would do that. Full circle. No. That's why we have, so as you stated earlier, that's why so many young people who committed a tap on the wrist violations that put them into the system when they should not have been put into the system, and now they've created a history of prison.
Yeah.
All because you're not willing to forgive.
Yeah, and a stigma, because we don't do restoration, we do retribution, and we've got to get back to a place of restoration. And somebody might argue that point, but it is, to have a felony record, to have any type of blemish on your record, you are stigmatized. It stays with you. It becomes increasingly difficult to reacclimate to society. It's an issue that we really have to look at. And so, and we have a model already through how God loves us and what he does for us. And if we keep saying that we are a Christian nation, wouldn't it be amazing if we would actually be that?
Yes, it would be. Before we check out, ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking with the author, Michael Phillips. His latest book, Wrong Lanes Have Right Turns. This is a book that is worth reading, that it really speaks to, it speaks to us in different ways. Some, it is a mirror of our past. In some cases, it's just a reminder of what we face and what we can do to fix the problem. And I want to thank you, Reverend Michael Phillips, for taking time to talk to us today. Before we
Absolutely.
check out, can you share with us your social media, any ways you want people to follow and connect with you?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, man, it's been great to be on with you and all the viewers and listeners and everybody else, man. Thank you so much. Connect with me on Instagram and Facebook at Mike Phillips Official. That's Mike Phillips. Don't use the whole name, just MIKE Phillips Official on Instagram and Facebook, on Twitter as well. And then certainly, if you want more information about the book, you can go to michaelphillipsbook.com. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You can get your copy from blackbookstore.com, or most definitely check out Michael Phillips' website. Brother Phillips, I want you to continue being creative. May God continue to bless you and everything that you touch. May you continue to inspire our next generation of people. May people open up and receive what you're saying through your book. And may it be received to a point that we can see change, that we can see people making right turns from wrong lanes, and our society become a better place for us all, not just for us, but our children and our children's children and generations to come.
Amen. Amen.
God is so in love with you. He's ready to wrap his loving arms around you. All you got to do is say yes. Until next time, you make it a great day.